Story 1. Being a touring musician in a low-level band, living in a van with 3 other questionable individuals, waiting for the next inevitable vehicle disaster, not eating for days, staying in dirty motels, facing sudden snowstorms, encountering strange drifters and shady truck stops, was enjoyable for the first half of my 20s. Ultimately, it is a lonely and disconnected lifestyle. Story 2. Hustle culture and grinding non-stop suggest that people should work as much as possible, but we need to take a break. Story 3. The film industry is full of manipulative individuals and dishonest people. Everyone has their own agenda, and no one cares what happens to you. Story 4. Alcoholism is often portrayed by dramatic characters who drown their sorrows in bottles of hard liquor while maintaining a healthy appearance and functionality. However, the reality is far uglier and more sordid. Story 5. What many people might refer to as romantic persistence is the idea that if you continually pursue someone, asking them out and making grand gestures, they will eventually be won over by your dedication. There is a person in my life now who exhibits this behavior, and it is exhausting, infuriating, and unsettling at times, either in turns or all at once. Take no for an answer, regardless of whether you are a man or a woman. It is neither cute nor romantic. It is simply immature behavior. The teenage romantic comedies of the 1980s should not serve as a guide for how to live your life. Story 6. Leaving a toxic relationship is not always easy. It is an exhausting process that involves untangling yourself from someone who does not recognize your worth as an individual. Story 7. Working with animals and veterinary medicine is not just playing with puppies and kittens all day. Honestly, only 10% of my day is spent with animals. The rest is dealing with people. We are severely underpaid and face emotional and physical trauma, both in the animals and ourselves. The most common accusation we receive is that we only care about money. Even veterinarians are buried under piles of debt and struggle to get by. Do you want to know why Fluffy's veterinary bill is $5,000? Most of that money goes to corporations and pharmaceutical companies. It is incredibly difficult for us to provide you with an estimate we know is extremely expensive. We are overwhelmed in this industry, which has one of the highest suicide rates. Story 8. War. I served as a Navy corpsman alongside the Marines. Many Marines joined with delusions of grandeur and a strong desire to prove themselves. I was fortunate not to have been in combat, but I witnessed the aftermath of what people can do to each other. Story 9. Trauma in general. Reading through some of these comments, our trauma does not give us the right to invalidate other people's pain. Pain is relative and everyone's pain is valid. Competing in the pain Olympics romanticizes your trauma. I was more referring to how some people believe it enriches one's life story when, in reality, it erases any potential, hope, or promise. Story 10. Addiction is often portrayed in media as an unhealthy habit that can be broken with a little willpower. In reality, many individuals are trapped in a relentless cycle, living the same difficult day for years, and their escape often feels miraculous. It truly is a life-altering disease that those outside of it struggle to understand. Story 11. Animal rescue. I frequently see people online commenting about how they would love to rescue all the dogs and how having a large number of dogs milling around their house is the dream. It genuinely makes me want to cry. Aside from the constant veterinary care and the money spent out of pocket, there are numerous emergency trips to overnight clinics for several hours, and the ongoing tasks of feeding, medicating, cleaning up after, and socializing with many dogs. This is a full-time job that requires being on 24/7. Add in your actual life, such as having a job, going to school, and maintaining personal relationships, and it all descends into chaos very quickly and is challenging to escape. Your average high-occupancy foster home does not resemble the photo spreads from home and garden magazines, and it doesn't smell like a fragrance store. You and your clothes don't either. That senior rescue that used to live stream their deck filled with little senior dogs is a complete facade. The actual trauma of picking up a dog off of transport whose bones are nearly visible through their skin, breaking up fights between 2 dogs that could seriously injure you, suffering from numerous dog bites, watching a rescue flinch because its owners used to throw it into the pool by its tail, making the call to let an aggressive dog who loves only you go, or having to let a rescue go because they need a substantial amount of veterinary care that you couldn't fund is overwhelming. Additionally, there are slips on freshly mopped floors, dealing with a neurotic dog that breaks out of the house in a rainstorm at 3 a.m., and realizing you stepped in dog waste on your way across the yard to your car. These are just a few of the more manageable experiences. For every life saved and every rescue rehomed, I think I would endure all of the trauma again and again. Still, it hurts my heart to know that so many people perceive it as simply delightful. Being involved in animal rescue nearly ruined my life, and I know many others who have become overwhelmed by it but feel trapped because, if not us, who else would be willing to do it? Story 12. You're welcome to romanticize it, but saving a life at no risk to my own was one of the most traumatic experiences of my life. I looked this up. I've never seen anyone express this before, but actually it's common, especially the what-ifs. If I had taken a different route using a similar amount of time and effort, I wouldn't have been there. If I had been 2 minutes earlier, she would have been fine until after I passed, and then she would have died. If I had been 2 minutes later, she would have been dead by the time I arrived. It is supposed to be glorious, but really it is difficult. I do not wish I hadn't done it. I wish there hadn't been a person drowning. Do not swim alone or while impaired. Story 13. People who spend a night or a week outdoors may believe they understand what it means to be homeless. In reality, it is an entirely different level of pressure and anxiety when you cannot simply choose to return to a home. Story 14. Mental illness is a serious issue. I have noticed an increase in shows featuring characters, mostly teenagers, wishing for a disorder as if it were an accessory. This is a misconception. Mental illness is a daily battle that can profoundly affect your brain over time. Story 15. I volunteered to help women who have been sex trafficked, those who have been in the sex industry for too long and wanted to escape but lacked the resources, and victims of domestic abuse. I dislike how sex work is often portrayed as simply dancing on social media to sell explicit photos for large sums of money, while the reality involves many homeless women, teenage runaways, and other vulnerable groups. Movies depicting a prostitute being rescued by a wealthy and handsome prince are so far from reality that it makes me sad to watch. Story 16. Teachers in movies and films are often portrayed as epic figures who are amazing, idolized, and change every student's life. Many people say, if only we had teachers like this, I would have actually learned something. However, this perception is unrealistic. One exception is Dead Poets Society, which presents a more realistic portrayal, as the teacher faces scapegoating and is ultimately fired. Story 17. Neurodivergence is something I embrace because I have no choice. It is a fundamental aspect of my biology. However, it is not simply a quirky personality trait. Story 18. Eating disorders, especially with the rise of romanticizing them on TikTok, feel reminiscent of eating disorder discussions on Tumblr in the 2010s. Story 19. Homelessness. There was nothing enjoyable or exciting about not knowing where I would go the next day. Many people took advantage of me because they were aware that I had nowhere to stay. Living on the street was significantly worse. I didn't feel like a nomad, as some people might romanticize the experience of being without a roof over their heads. I did not experience some profound worldly journey or gain any special insight. All that happened was that I became traumatized, lost everything I owned, and realized that most people can be unkind when they know you lack options. It is also surprisingly expensive to be homeless. I had a job at a fast food restaurant, but without a home or kitchen, I had to eat out daily. Although I chose inexpensive food, the costs added up. I needed a gym membership to take regular showers and would stay in a hotel whenever possible. I paid people to let me stay with them, and I hardly had anything left to save. Story 20. Being a long-haul truck driver can be challenging. You do not see much beyond long stretches of highway and a few select areas in each city or town where you stop. The work is difficult, taking a toll on your body, your mind, and your family. Most days are spent feeling exhausted and lonely. Story 21. Disabled family members can create challenges. It can be difficult and often leads to strained relationships and feelings of resentment and worry. Story 22. The love of a good woman can fix a bad man, or the idea that women want a bad boy. Not that I don't believe someone can change, but if someone is fundamentally disrespectful, aggressive, detached, or controlling, the best woman in the world isn't going to change that. The same applies to women too. It is a more common theme for the bad boy trope to be paired with a good woman, but it can be the reverse as well. Story 23. Autism, particularly in women, is often misunderstood. I am not a tortured genius, nor am I a whimsical romantic figure. I am simply a human being navigating the reality that, despite my efforts to improve my social skills, I struggle to connect with others. I often find myself unintentionally upsetting someone and then desperately trying to mend the situation afterward. Story 24. Being a full-time caregiver is difficult, can be overwhelming, and it drains your energy, leaving little room for personal life. In response to a couple of comments, I want to clarify that I did not choose this situation. It was imposed on me due to a lack of alternatives. I haven't been alone in almost 10 years. If I can't even go to the store by myself, my health is suffering. My mother displays troubling behavior, including psychopathic tendencies, racism, and homophobia. This pattern has persisted, but it has become more pronounced recently. No one would tolerate this, and she would likely be rejected from any nursing home we might consider. Story 25. Stalking is not a joke. It is not funny to have someone follow you at night with the intention of kidnapping you. It is not funny to discover photos of yourself sleeping taken from outside your bedroom window on a friend's phone. It is most certainly not funny to feel as helpless and scared as I did. I attempted to take my life because my stalker threatened that if I reported him, he would harm my parents, as I saw no way out. Anyone who comments about romanticizing stalking will be blocked. If you would like to kindly ask about examples of this, I would be happy to share. However, any comments that are less than polite and open-minded will be blocked. Thank you for all your support. I didn't expect to receive so many comments. I promise I will try to respond to all of them by the end of the day. Story 26. Fixing the bad boy. If only people knew how nice, comfortable, and safe it is to choose the good guys instead. Story 27. Having large breasts can be frustrating. It is difficult to determine what is more annoying, the lower back pain or the challenge of finding clothes that fit properly, as even plus sizes often cater to a normal chest. I have to buy swimsuits one size larger just to ensure adequate chest coverage. Story 28. Mental illness can be challenging. While I may not experience it as severely as some, it still isn't enjoyable. Ruminating for months due to an obsessive-compulsive disorder flare-up is difficult. Assuming the worst-case scenario and worrying about every little detail because of anxiety is exhausting. Doubting your own decisions and being overly critical of yourself because of low self-esteem is disheartening. Story 29. Celebrity chefs. Have you seen the show? No, I do this for a living. It isn't nearly as fun or glamorous as people perceive it. Back in the 2010s, we had a massive influx of people applying for jobs who had gone to culinary school. Because it sounds fun. Okay, go cut this case of bell peppers, then a bag of onions, 2 cases of carrots, and prep the line. But I don't have that much time. Better find it. Story 30. Mental illness. I am tired of people being in a bad mood and saying, "Oh my gosh, I'm so bipolar," or, "Oh my gosh, I clean all the time. I'm so obsessive compulsive. Please just be quiet already." Story 31. Not working due to a disability. Many people think that being on disability is a constant vacation. It is not. I can't believe the number of people who do not realize that a life of pain and poor health, along with barely scraping by financially, is not a good life. Trust me, I am not playing on easy mode. I am dealing with life-altering illnesses, widespread daily pain, 13 different daily medications, and a disability check that will always keep me well below the poverty line. There are constant doctor appointments, pharmacy runs, keeping track of medications, and finding ways to pay for all the necessary tests and treatments. And then you hear everyone talk about how most people on disability are faking it. Most assume that anyone receiving any form of government assistance is taking advantage of the system. It is even worse when you have what is often referred to as an invisible disability, which includes any condition that does not require the use of a wheelchair. So, when you see me with my handicap license plate, pulling into my very old and unsafe government-subsidized apartment with my bag of medications from the pharmacy and food from the local food pantry, you assume I am having the time of my life while you toil away at your job. If anyone has questions about what it is really like, feel free to ask. Story 32. Autism. We are often portrayed as genius archetypes or savants who can memorize pi to 10,000 digits and crack codes effortlessly. For the most part, we notice patterns, possibly because we may struggle with social cues. However, as an everyday autistic individual, I am trying to mask my traits to keep a job and avoid the risk of homelessness with a child. Story 33. Forensic work, such as crime scene investigation, is often portrayed as glamorous in television shows. In reality, when violence occurs, it is never at a person's best moment. Their home is rarely organized, dishes are often unwashed, litter boxes are usually messy, and laundry is typically scattered about. There is seldom a bizarre or intriguing reason behind the violence. More often than not, there is no grand conspiracy involved. The victim is usually an ordinary person leading a typical, chaotic life until something tragic happens. Then, investigators arrive at their home, asking questions and examining their belongings. Additionally, there is rarely a moment of sudden clarity where the entire case is solved instantly. These investigations are lengthy, tedious, and physically demanding. Certain sights and smells will linger with you permanently. You can conduct thorough work, collect evidence, and send it to the lab for analysis, yet still not uncover any leads to aid the investigation. Story 34. Adoption can be challenging. Some of us end up with abusive families, and people are often too busy telling us adoptees that we need to be grateful to really listen to our experiences. Furthermore, the insensitive jokes that are made often overlook the possibility that there may be adoptees present. I'm not suggesting that being adopted is entirely negative in every case, but for many of us, circumstances are far from perfect. Story 35. Being a lesbian can be a unique experience. Some straight women may say, "I wish I could date women. It would be so much easier." But they often wouldn't last 2 weeks if they changed their dating app preferences. Story 36. Running a bed and breakfast was an experience I had while my mother operated one in our home during my high school years. She rented out all 3 bedrooms, including mine, so there were times I would sleep in the nearby field or at my dad's place. The routine involved cleaning rooms, preparing breakfast, and more. My mother was a single parent doing what she had to do. I didn't always appreciate it, but I respect her efforts, and as a result, my sister and I received some financial support when she passed away last year, which was certainly more than we would have otherwise. Story 37. Trigger warning. Controversial topic. Armed forces culture. My entire family is part of it, and it is not glamorous or easy. Story 38. Wine mom culture promotes a mindset where people share memes that encourage functional alcoholism, which can damage marriages. Story 39. Babies. You are never prepared. Look at any first-time mother-to-be with her starry eyes and excitement about her plans for after the baby is born, believing that once the pregnancy is over, everything will be so much easier. Compare this to the same woman 2 months after the birth. Just offering to hold the baby while she takes a shower will earn you the same gratitude usually reserved for kidney donors. Story 40. Poverty, in films, shows, and even musicals, is often portrayed in a trivial manner. Scenes depict situations like, "Oh, the lights are out. Let's light candles." Or, "Oh no, there's no food. Let's gather what we can and eat fast food. How fun." Or, "My landlord is giving me issues because I forgot to pay. I need to have a crazy adventure to make up the amount I need before I get kicked out." It's not cute and it's not fun. It's hard to keep your head above water. Living paycheck to paycheck is extremely stressful, and I never want to feel that again. Story 41. Eating disorders, especially anorexia, have gained significant attention on TikTok recently, prompting me to take a break from the platform. Story 42. Men continuing to pursue and harass women after being turned down is not pleasant, and can be terrifying for someone. The idea of not taking no for an answer, or the hope of wearing someone down through harassment, is often portrayed positively. Story 43. I work incredibly hard for low pay and minimal recognition. While they acknowledge my efforts, it often leads to even more challenging tasks without any increase in compensation. So, in a way, there is some meaning to it. Story 44. Owning a small business, especially with employees, comes with significant responsibilities. Each employee, along with their families and young children, relies on your ability to guide the organization. You are the person clients contact when an employee makes a mistake. You must step in when someone quits, regardless of the simplicity of the task. You are also responsible for making difficult decisions that impact the people you interact with daily. Your assets serve as collateral to keep the business operational. There is a strong possibility that you are undercompensated and may even be losing substantial money. Story 45. Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder is not quirky or cute. At my level, it is debilitating. Without my medication, I am essentially non-functional. Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder affects every part of my life, and it is not just about focus. It comes with conditions like auditory processing disorder, which makes everyday communication exhausting. People who casually take 10 milligrams of Adderall for a 5-hour boost do not have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. I, on the other hand, will likely never go below 20 milligrams of extended-release Adderall. And even that is a struggle. I have spent most of my life taking 40 milligrams daily just to reach some sense of baseline functioning. I have tried lowering it, but it is a trade-off. Less strain on my body, sure, but a much harder time getting through the day. And then there is the withdrawal, brutal both physically and mentally. Add to that the difficulty of getting prescriptions filled because of the overdiagnosis trend, and we have a system that fails people like me. It takes me over an hour after taking my medication just to feel functional, to have a single clear thought I can grab onto and act on. And if I do not act on that thought immediately, it is gone. That is what attention deficit hyperactivity disorder really looks like. It is not a productivity hack. It is a lifelong uphill climb. You know your attention deficit hyperactivity disorder is serious when people can tell you have not taken your medication. The overdiagnosis I am referring to includes people who went to a virtual doctor to get a few milligrams of instant release to help them focus for 5 hours straight while working from home. As someone on a high extended release dose that fixes my attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, I also cannot stay focused for over 2 hours at a time when working from home. It is not attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Their frontal lobes are fully developed. Working from home just comes with more distractions. Brains are not meant to do multiple hours of work straight without a break, unless you take Adderall in excess. Whether they realize it or not, these individuals are using Adderall as a recreational drug for work. Story 46. Homesteading, farming, ranching, and rural living in general. I loved growing up on a working farm. I love living in the country, being able to grow my own food, identifying animal tracks, reading the weather, and driving anything with pedals and wheels. There are countless little things that rural kids learn in their daily lives and chores. I have amazing stories about encounters with skunks, coyotes, and a bobcat. I was once close enough to a stooping hawk to hear the mouse squeak as it died. I also have distressing stories about coyotes killing sheep, losing electricity during bad weather, and spending the night in the barn to keep the cows safe. I was out of college before I completely lost my farmer's tan. I have hilarious stories about city people moving to the country and the unusual things they do. It's challenging, especially if you genuinely want it to work and are not just playing around. Living off what you can grow and store, depending on livestock sold at auction or produce sold at market, is harder than it seems. The chores, the constant list of things to do, caring for animals, and trying to decide when to plant can be overwhelming. Losing everything to a late frost or a summer flood or drought adds to the difficulty. And then there's the lack of certain modern amenities. It's only in the last couple of years that we got broadband out where I live. No one delivers to our location, and most people can't even find it. When the pump goes out, we fix it ourselves, and if there's a fire, you must be ready to fight it because the nearest fire department is 30 minutes away. I love it, but it's hard. Story 47. Stripping and visiting strip clubs. Most men who go are often depressed and lonely, lacking emotional support. It is not an enjoyable place to party. It tends to attract insecure individuals seeking validation from others, as well as lonely men in need of help or those with problematic behaviors. Story 48. Alcoholism. Helping someone recover from addiction is not a bonding process. It can be incredibly challenging and may erode trust. Story 49. Living in Italy. Italy is an extremely difficult country to live in. It is decades, if not generations, behind in terms of feminism. It is profoundly racist and quite xenophobic. The economy is in shambles, and the government is corrupt. I say this as a person of Italian descent who has lived there, speaks the language, looks Italian, and has a deeply Italian name. Believe me, you don't want to live there. You want to go on vacation there. The same rules apply to dating Italian men. It is not a romantic comedy. Navigating a multicultural relationship is hard work. He will choose his mother over you. Story 50. Meeting the love of my life, having her die, and hearing people say I'll meet someone else or at least that I experienced that kind of love is frustrating. Story 51. Being young, I didn't feel in control of my life and my identity until I was at least 36. I know that may seem relatively young, but high school, college, and my 20s were more difficult than enjoyable. Story 52. Motherhood is all about renunciation and sacrifice for women. I love being a mother, but it is not easy. Story 53. Depression. I am depending on my antidepressant to keep me alive. This isn't just feeling sad. Story 54. The idea of taking a break from life to get things in order. I didn't go to a spa to escape my responsibilities because I'm lazy. I had a week-long doctor-mandated stay in a mental health facility due to a psychological breakdown. I experienced hallucinations, paranoia, and severe distress. Even after my release, I dealt with seizures and couldn't recall my name. I now have an entire month missing from my memory. People, especially caregivers, need breaks. The way social media portrays them is upsetting and inappropriate. Story 55. Mental illness, particularly bipolar disorder, has been a significant part of my life. My mental illness did not make me stronger, more creative, or more interesting. It nearly killed me several times and led to the destruction of relationships and the loss of opportunities that mattered to me. It disrupted my life for an extended period, and there are years I will never regain. I have worked incredibly hard to achieve stability and take responsibility for my actions, so I wouldn't hurt anyone else. Additionally, no one can love you out of it. Story 56. Must be nice is something I hear from people who learn I can't work due to a disability. I have attention deficit/hyperactivity disorder and severe anxiety as well as panic disorder. It's not nice. I would love to be normal, have a job, and not feel looked down upon for my circumstances. I would love to not be thrown into fight or flight mode constantly, whether doing everyday activities or dealing with triggers that seem trivial to others and even to me. I would love to never have a panic attack again. I would love to not feel too overwhelmed to function when too many people are around or when it's loud or bright. That would be nice. Story 57. Homeschooling. The studies often cited claiming that homeschoolers outperform public school students have significant flaws in data collection and sampling. To summarize, these studies can access statistics for nearly all public school students, but rely only on voluntary data from homeschoolers. Homeschooling families like mine that did not perform well certainly weren't volunteering their test results. I do not believe it should be illegal or stigmatized, as homeschooling can be remarkable. However, the homeschooling community at large also experiences instances of abuse and neglect. I have known families who withdrew their children from public schools to homeschool them because they were tired of having Child Protective Services contacted. We need to implement safety measures to ensure these children receive a proper education and better protection overall. Story 58. Pregnancy and childbirth have been experienced by women throughout history, but many have faced severe complications, and tragically, both mothers and babies have died. Most women would have chosen an epidural if given the option. Story 59. Giving up children for adoption can leave many adopted children with deep emotional issues. I am adopted and had great parents, but I still face challenges. My issues aren't too severe, but I am in a group on Facebook where many others share significant problems. Story 60. Owning horses is a significant responsibility. You may not want to own a horse. You may just want access to one. We own 6 horses and care for 10 every day. We do not get days off, sick days, or vacations. We do not own them. They own us. Do not get me wrong. We love it, but most people do not understand the cost and commitment involved. I work full-time at our barn and also work full-time outside the house to make money. The number of people who buy a horse only to turn around and get rid of it a year later because they do not fully grasp the time and money required is disheartening. Story 61. Chronic illness. I am not a Victorian waif dying prettily of consumption. The reality is much more brutal and unflattering. Story 62. Being a librarian is a hybrid role that combines elements of customer service, teaching, and technology. The compensation is often insufficient for independent living, even if you invest in graduate school, which is typically a requirement for most permanent, full-time positions. Reading books makes up almost none of your job responsibilities, except for activities like story time for preschoolers at a public library. There are rewarding moments when interacting with others, but the majority of the job involves meetings, emails, demanding customers, and challenging government regulations. Story 63. Forced marriage in romance books. I come from a culture that still has arranged or semi-arranged marriages. There is nothing romantic about it, and 85% of those marriages do not end in happily ever after. Tradwives. Again, I come from a culture where women are considered second-class citizens. Why so many women in the United States want to give up their agency is beyond me. Most women I know, including my own family members who are stay-at-home wives, are miserable. There is no quitting time, you are constantly working. There is no pay, and your husband controls the money, thinking you are not working because you are at home all day. Never mind the responsibilities of keeping a household running, taking care of children, and all the other tasks that make up life, which is more than a full-time job. Story 64. Addiction. At least in media, you often see appealing characters, often anti-heroes, casually using pills or alcohol. That is unacceptable. I never had an issue with alcohol, but I was addicted to Xanax for a while, which was genuinely the lowest point of my life. I barely remember that time, but I look back on it with distaste. There is nothing cool about dependency. Story 65. The trope of being mean to everyone but having a soft spot for someone is somewhat embarrassing. People often wonder why you are dating this person, and you feel the need to sit there and explain, "He's different when we're alone." It sounds quite ridiculous. Story 66. Poorly executed BDSM involves violations of consent and poor communication. That is not a fun environment. It is a serious issue. Story 67. Subsistence farming, now often referred to as homesteading, can be demanding. I lived on an organic food farm commune for a while. It was physically challenging, grueling, and occasionally traumatic, alongside the struggle with poverty. Story 68. No, having attention deficit hyperactivity disorder does not mean I laugh about forgetting things or that I cannot stop fidgeting. I am not cutesy and childish for being on the autism spectrum. I struggle to act like a typical person, and people often dislike me for it. Story 69. Being a librarian means I don't get to sit around and read all day, and many of us simply aren't glamorous. Story 70. Giving cardiopulmonary resuscitation is terrifying, and the odds of someone surviving from just cardiopulmonary resuscitation are horrifying. Cardiopulmonary resuscitation only works if that person gets access to medical care quickly. Pursuing a doctoral degree is lonely. Absentee parents can cause deep emotional damage. Having a father who seems supportive but is never around when it matters affects trust in ways you'll never fully understand. I struggle to trust people to stay when they say they will. Being a trauma survivor did not make me stronger. I made myself stronger. I am not an inspirational story. The man who assaulted me did not face consequences, despite my report. He was a medical professional. I can never return to that ward again for my chronic issue. Experiencing violent crime is terrifying. I was robbed at knife point. I don't want to hear what people think they would have done because they would not react the way they think they would. You can't say what you would have done in that moment. Living with chronic illness and pain is exhausting. I am not an example for you to use as proof that we can achieve anything if we just try hard enough. I want to stop being in pain. I want to make long-term plans. Receiving a late diagnosis of neurodivergence has left me fatigued. I am tired of not remembering what I have learned. I am tired of second-guessing my knowledge. I need the tools to access and retain information, and I'm frustrated by a mind full of irrelevant details while lacking recall of essential facts. Bullying compounded my struggles with absentee parents. I often question if someone who claims to be my friend is genuine or laughing behind my back. School life as a queer person is challenging. I was a non-binary child in an all-girls school during a time when the term non-binary was not well known. On the plus side, there is no insult someone could create that would hurt me anymore. Teenage girls are incredibly creative. In summary, Britain has become a grim reality. Please stop romanticizing this dystopian landscape of a country. Story 71. Living abroad has been a significant part of my life, totaling 6 years in various locations during my early to mid-20s. It frustrates me to see influencers from the United States romanticizing the experience while often displaying arrogance. Many do not even speak the language of the country they relocate to, and their social circles consist mainly of fellow Americans who impose their lifestyle rather than embracing the local culture. If they truly did immerse themselves, they might understand what I realized after striving to avoid the American bubble. It's challenging and often lonely. No matter how close you become with someone from that country, there will always be cultural references and slang you do not grasp. Humor and charm feel harder to convey in a second language, and you miss the simplicity of understanding how everything functions. The comforts of home, including food, transportation, relationship dynamics, and public etiquette, create a longing for familiarity. Do not misunderstand me. Living abroad was transformative and enriching, and I am grateful for the experience. However, it was often very difficult. Upon returning to the United States, I found that my friends had become well integrated into their social circles, leaving me unsure of where I fit in. I appreciated my time abroad for all it taught me, but the influencers romanticizing it often appear out of touch with the realities faced by locals, further emphasizing their reluctance to let go of their home country mindset and fully engage with their host communities. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.